Biden told the UN that Russia and Russia alone are responsible for the current war. Meanwhile, the UK have got boots on the ground in Ukraine, which it was said would never happen. So we ask, was Tucker Carlson right when he said there'll be a hot war between the US and Russia within a year? Hello there, you awakening wonders wherever you may be. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for not being governed by fear. Thank you for remaining discerning and awake and principled. Thank you for elevating your consciousness above the dirge and deluge of the legacy media that wants you dumb and distracted, and to accept facts like that Russia and Russia alone bears responsibility for the current conflict between Russia and Ukraine. Remember, we need you to follow us now more than ever. Here's how you can do that. And if it's within your means, support us. It's more important that you support this movement than ever before. We need you. It's plain we need you. The government demonetized us. We need you. Now let's get on to a much more important story. In fact, the kind of stories that in any sensible world, the legacy media will be reporting responsibly. Biden has said that Russia and Russia alone are responsible for the Russia-Ukraine conflict. That means, was there any US involvement in the 2014 coup? Did NATO infringe on former Soviet territories? What happened with the Nord Stream pipeline? What's going on with all those biolabs across Ukraine? What is BlackRock's role going to be after the conflict ends? There are a lot of questions. Not in the legacy media, though. There are no questions at all. Just propaganda. Just the amplification of a state message that wants you dumb, distracted, and incapable for discerning for yourself. Let's have a look at how the legacy media reports on this story and introduces the significant amplification of actual UK troops in Ukraine. Remember, when we're reporting on this, we're reporting in a nuanced way. We're not saying that Ukraine oughtn't be saved and served. We're not saying that the humanitarian issues and the unnecessary loss of life are not significant. We're not saying that Ukraine don't have their right to their own agenda and own historical sovereign trajectory. We're simply asking, are the legacy media telling you the truth? How is this war going? Whose benefits are being served? Do you think that US involvement is for humanitarian reasons, or are there military-industrial complex motivations behind it? These are the questions we're asking you. Are you being told the truth? Let's have a look at the man himself, the President of the United States of America. Get ready, because here he is.
Let me be clear.
Well, we don't generally come to you for clarity, Joe. Whimsical anecdotes, bizarre half-truths about domestic fires, fudged facts, lies, concealment of information, endless wars. You're our man. Clarity.
Certain principles of our international system are sacrosanct. Sovereignty, territorial integrity, human rights. These are the core tenets of the UN Charter. The pillars for peaceful relations among nations.
Also, though, they are principles that are regularly transgressed, as revealed by WikiLeaks by Julian Assange. That's why he's in prison right now. There's not another reason, like, oh, do you remember he did all that shoplifting? No, it was that he revealed a bunch of war crimes. In fact, as you know, because we've told you, the International Criminal Court cannot be utilised to prosecute Russia for their criminal invasion. It was a criminal invasion because the US would have to tacitly acknowledge that so many of their previous invasions have also been criminal. Wars like the Iraq War, which Joe Biden lobbied for and supported.
Without which we cannot achieve any of our goals. That has not changed, and that must not change.
You know, like in museums where you see an animatronic model of a president. In 80 years and 10, like the one of that of Joe Biden will be better.
Let's see if they wore underwear back then. Yeah!
Yet, for the second year in a row, this gathering, dedicated to peaceful resolution of conflicts.
That's what we're dedicated to, the peaceful resolution of conflicts. That's why the first thing I want to tell you is we're going to be looking for a diplomatic and peaceful solution. Plainly, Russia have their own agenda, their own imperial agenda, and their invasion was criminal. But like I just said, we need peace. That's the reason we exist. So this is what we're going to do. We're definitely not going to mess with the Minsk Accord. We're definitely not going to send Boris Johnson to Ukraine to shatter a peace deal that was on the table. They did do all of that. They don't exist for peace. They require war. You know that already.
Is darkened by the shadow of war.
The profitable shadow of war.
An illegal war of conquest brought without provocation by Russia against its neighbor Ukraine.
Just saying stuff, it's mad. In a way, this rehearsed, revised, and presumably scripted speech that he's, I imagine, reading from a teleprompter is just as mad as the stuff he spontaneously says to console victims of massive fires. I was in my house, it burned down, there was lightning, it struck the pond, I got a Chevy out back, my cat caught fire. We got the insurance money though. Honda is one of the best people I know. Corn Pop was a bad dude. Like, even his spontaneous sort of fever dream Joycean prose makes as much sense as his carefully prepared remarks at the UN, because none of it's true.
Like every nation in the world, the United States wants this war to end.
Whoa, but hold on then. Couldn't you dedicate your time, attention, and significant resources to bringing that about? Not all of you will love Donald Trump, but all of you will have heard him say, I'd end this war 24 hours.
I will end that war in one day. It'll take 24 hours.
It'd be perfect phone call, perfect phone call. And, listen, I'm not claiming to be an expert in geopolitics. What I'm claiming is it's visible, demonstrable, verifiable, and evident that the United States is prolonging this war through its actions.
Like every nation in the world, the United States wants this war to end.
This guy just checking out his phone. Old bloke in front of Sierra Leone. Did Joe Biden really have a domestic fire? What? Hang on a minute. That laptop. Wait a minute. Did he attend business? Hey!
No nation wants this war to end more than Ukraine. And we strongly support Ukraine in its efforts to bring about a diplomatic resolution that delivers just and lasting peace.
I don't know that the best way to get just and lasting peace is through, bombing Crimea. I think there might at least be diplomatic solutions. I recognise that sometimes when you're dealing with a historic geopolitical conflict with deep roots, like the conflict that is regionalised between Ukraine and Russia, and the historic conflict between the United States of America and Russia, there is a degree of complexity that's unlikely to be perfectly disseminated, broken down, and understood in an online video. But what we can say with some certainty is we're not being told the truth. The media aren't investigating it correctly. They are functioning as amplifying propagandists for a state message. That this is beneficial to certain state interests. There is a unipolar agenda that America have themselves explicitly spoken about. Numerous times you've heard people say stuff like, this is actually a cheap war. For 3% of our budget, we're able to reduce the capacity of Russia to a significant extent. We've just seen Chrystia Freeland and Hillary Clinton say, we're sending a clear message to China. You're next. Democracy is fighting back, but in advance of you fighting, so fighting forward, I suppose. All those things are relevant. So this is not a discussion about whether there's a conspiracy at play. This is simply an invitation to look at a variety of questions that have to be ignored in order for this narrative to be maintained. You can't talk about 2014 coup. What's their version of why that happened? You can't talk about NATO infringement on former Soviet territories. You can't talk about Lockheed Martin, Raytheon, etc., and the military-industrial complex's ongoing profits. You can't talk about the location of those biolabs and how they're funded. There are so many actual just questions. It's not conspiracy theories, they're legitimate questions, and the reason those questions don't get asked by the legacy media is because they are propagandists that normalise the agenda of the powerful and shut down dissenting voices by any means necessary. It's becoming clear to me. Have you ever considered that the United States of America might not march you into Armageddon, and therefore you might need to live a little longer? That is why I'm proud that we are partnered by Field of Greens. Now, the Mayo Clinic says if you want to help prevent heart disease, lower blood pressure and cholesterol, eat 5 servings of fruit and vegetables every day. But who's got time for that when you're being surveilled, when you're being censored, when you're being shut down? Each fruit and each vegetable in Field of Greens was medically selected by actual doctors, real doctors, not people in white coats that are trying to shut down free speech. I'm saying actual doctors. And they've medically selected each vegetable to support your vital organs like your heart, your lungs, your kidney, and immune system. Obviously, flu season is upon us, and you know what people will be suggesting. Wouldn't Field of Greens be a much better solution? It works fast, you'll feel better with more energy, you'll notice your skin, hair, nails all look healthier. If you don't always eat right and exercise, join me and take Field of Greens. We can get you started with 15% off your first order. You can do it right now, it's easy. Visit brickhouserussell.com and use the promo code BRAND. That's brickhouserussell.com and use the promo code BRAND. So if you're looking for something like this, use us because it totally helps us to have your support in this situation. Thank you, you're doing us a real favour. That's promo code BRAND at brickhouserussell.com. There's a link in the description. Support us if you can. Thanks a lot. Right, let's get back to this global war we're being marched into by lunatics.
Russia alone bears responsibility for this war.
Well, that's just not how like history works, is it? Like even something like the Nazis, like something plainly bad, unless you're in Canada when it's, hey, the Nazis. Like, you have to go, oh yeah, God, I suppose, yeah, the First World War, oh, the Treaty of Versailles. Yeah, God, it was complicated. Maybe there could have been a better resolution to the First World War, and there are two imperialist forces or numerous imperialist interests, and it's complicated. And so this, plainly, with the stuff that I've just listed a bunch of times, just because I've listened to Jeffrey Sachs and a variety of other people, journalists and academics worthy of the names, rather than systems of amplification for propaganda and academic institutions that are funded in ways that simply mean they're going to support imperialist notions and mainstream narratives. We know that to say that Russia and Russia alone, it's not like didn't NATO, that Stoltenberg dude, the other day goes, oh, well, what happened was Putin said, if you do this, we're going to do that. And we just did it.
President Putin sent a draft treaty that he wanted NATO to sign to promise no more NATO enlargement. That was a precondition for not invade Ukraine. Of course, we didn't sign that. The opposite happened.
I mean, that in itself, that's a form of provocation. Like, why are we not, in a democracy, able to say, what's the role of NATO? Do we need NATO? What's the function of NATO? Are NATO behaving responsibly? Do we have a shared agenda? This is the truth behind all this. Your agenda and my agenda is not their agenda. That's it. That's it, put simply. The agenda of the government and the interests that they serve are so opposing to yours that the only way that this massive conflict can't be exposed that would lead to revolution is for a media that lies to you. That's it. If they went, your government's gone mental, they're running a whole bunch of wars now that are none of your business. Do you want that? Let's have a vote on it. That's not possible, is it? If you're not voting on it, if you're not discussing it, it's because it's not in your interest. That's why.
Russia alone has the power to end this war immediately. And it's Russia alone that stands in the way of peace.
This is astonishing when you actually look at it. This is propaganda live and we just carry on with our lives. I mean, I suppose because in some ways it seems irrelevant and abstract, and in a way it is abstract and irrelevant because you can't really do anything about it except, as I say, participate in a massive campaign of disobedience and join a movement that opposes this kind of thing. Red button. That's not a nuclear button, Joe.
Because the Russia's price for peace is Ukraine's capitulation, Ukraine's territory, and Ukraine's children.
They actually want the children. That's actually, I'll tell you from personal experience, it's actually very difficult to bring them up. What I would say is that they want the capitulation of Russia. That's what they want. So they've said that. It's not me saying this. They've said publicly the objective is to drain Russia. Remember that thing? Ukraine are getting casualty adverse. This is the problem. This is why they want to censor these spaces, because this is just from memory. You can just go, hold on, but they said that, they said that. The fact is through independent media like this, not exclusively us, but I'm proud to say it includes us, and we are here because of you. We can just say, no, wait a minute, it's not just Russia's fault because of these 10 facts. Boom! And if you can't address those 10 facts, what you've got yourself there is a conversation, a debate. And they don't want to have a conversation and debate because they're lying.
Russia believes that the world will grow weary and allow it to brutalize Ukraine without consequence.
Go on then, brutalise Ukraine without consequence. Night. Get a reductive simplification of a complex situation.
But I ask you this.
Old Sierra Leone still on his phone. Does Hunter Biden have any qualifications to work for Burisma?
If we abandon the core principles of the United States to appease an aggressor, can any member state in this body feel confident that they are protected? If we allow Ukraine to be carved up, is the independence of any nation secure? I'd respectfully suggest the answer is no.
Respectfully suggest some weird rhetoric involved in this stuff. Of course, it's odd to hear the inversion of the facts. Isn't if we can do this, if we can say that, if they can do this, if they can do that. In a sense, the very thing that Biden suggests we ought be terrified of is already happening, and he is its figurehead.
We have to stand up to this naked aggression today and deter other would-be aggressors tomorrow.
There's another war coming. Semiconductors in Taiwan. Get ready. Or if you enjoyed Star Wars, you're going to love the return of the semiconductor.
That's why the United States, together with our allies and partners around the world, will continue to stand with the brave people of Ukraine as they defend their sovereignty and territorial integrity and their freedom.
You couldn't even get to the end of the phrase territorial integrity because it was so lacking in integrity. Okay, so there's some propaganda that was eagerly lapped up, except for by old Baldy in front of Sierra Leone, who was fact-checking what's happening. Excuse me, no, that didn't happen. Let's have a look at an alternative version of reality that might not be so valuable to the elites. The Biden administration used last week's meeting of the United Nations General Assembly as a platform to launch a full-throated tirade against Russia of the kind made by countries before they declare war. Oh, so Tucker Carlson might have been right when he said there will be a hot war within a year. Let us know. In his speech to the UN Tuesday, Biden declared the United States, together with our allies and partners around the world, will continue to stand with the brave people of Ukraine as they defend their sovereignty and territorial integrity and their freedom. Of course, this is the kind of rhetoric that when you say it sounds good, sounds normal, sounds like what should be happening. But don't a lot of political speeches sound like when you sort of think, yeah, if that was actually what you were doing, everything would be okay, but simply lies and propaganda. Biden asserted that Russia alone bears responsibility for the war in Ukraine. Russia alone has the power to end this war immediately, and it is Russia alone that stands in the way of peace, because Russia's price for peace is Ukraine's capitulation, Ukraine's territory and Ukraine's children. Extraordinary rhetoric. I think when people say stuff like that, you kind of know that they're lying. Another indicator might be if, for example, they lobbied all big tech platforms to deny Russia Today the ability to broadcast. So, for example, YouTube won't broadcast Russia Today because you think that's because Russia Today's content is so brilliant that if you saw it, you go, oh my God, let's go and support Russia and become Putin apologists. No, it's just simply because it will provide a different perspective. And if you had a different perspective, you wouldn't be so malleable. And that's why you are members of this community. That's why we exist in this community, because we care more about truth than this mad giddying deception. This was not just a speech, it was an unrelenting attack on any notion that the United States is open to a negotiated settlement of this war. Well, that's good to know. So it's the opposite of all of the language around peace and kindness and justice and standing together and freedom and opposing tyranny. It's the sort of opposite of that. The White House is demanding the unconditional surrender of Russia, accompanied by the overthrow of its government and its territorial breakup. That's mental. So they want to do what they're saying Russia want to do. Have you noticed that? Have you noticed this inversion of values? Have you noticed the vilification of anyone that dissents? Have you noticed that they claim to be telling the truth while lying, standing for peace while going to war? Literal Orwellian inversion of language. Achieving this goal is impossible without direct US involvement, transforming a proxy war into a direct conflict between the United States and Russia. The conflict in Ukraine is already America's war, for which the US and NATO are providing logistics, weapons and intelligence. But the failure of Ukraine's counteroffensive has led the Biden administration to conclude that achieving its objectives is impossible without turning the current proxy war into a full-scale conflict involving the deployment of US-NATO troops. Escalation that was pledged at the commencement would not occur. You can check that for yourself. You can literally go and watch Joe Biden, the man there, saying, yeah, it's all Russia's fault. You can watch him saying, this will never lead to boots on the ground. This will never lead to a war. We're not at war. We can't do that. That would lead to World War III. All we actually need is a memory. That's all you need is a memory. But they don't want you to have that. That's why there's this state of fear. That's why you're doing well staying with us. We're going, hold on a minute. I'm not going to just respond to fear, hysteria, propaganda and lies. I'm going to get deep. I'm going to stay true to myself. I'm going to discern. And then you'll be able to go, wait, hold on. Who was that said that there could never be a war because it would lead to Armageddon? Hold on, that was Joe Biden. Wait a minute, didn't NATO say they spoke to Putin and he said that escalation would lead to further war? Wait a minute, wasn't there a story last week where they said that Elon Musk was talking to the Kremlin and actually we found out that all he was doing was not letting Ukraine use Starlink to bomb Crimea? Hang on, they're lying. They're lying because they're liars. And then you become free. It's been widely asserted in the American media that Russian President Vladimir Putin believes a change in the American government would lead to a shift in policy. This is a delusion. Nevertheless, it is the aim of the Biden administration to preempt such a policy shift by escalating the conflict to a point where, well before the 2024 election, the war will have involved a commitment of US prestige and resources, including manpower, that makes a diplomatic and non-military solution impossible. We're going to stop there on this platform. To see the video in its entirety, join us over on Rumble. There's a link in the description. If you can support us there, it's incredibly valuable, but your attention is the most valuable thing you can give us, and they know that, and that's why they're trying to stop you giving it to us. Stay free.